We've been using NFTs for a land registry product in Asia and a land registry product in Africa for the last 2 years.
Mohsen Massoud, he's the CEO and founder of Accrue. He is an expert in tokenomics. He's got over a decade in real estate investment experience. His education background includes York University, Harvard Business School, Harvard University's Grad School of Design, and the Sayed Business School at Oxford. How you doing, Mohsen?
Doing good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, hey, NFTs in real estate or security tokens, however,
Well, two very, very different things, right? So the benefit of being the last one is I'll get to take a few extra minutes at the end of it as well. And I get to clarify a lot of misconceptions that went out throughout the call today. NFTs are non-fungible tokens. Security tokens are very, very different. NFTs cannot be fractionalized. In order for an NFT to be fractionalized, there are fungible tokens that are issued by an NFT being placed into a smart contract. I may be geeking out at this point, so tell me to stop anytime you want.
No.
There's very specific use cases for NFTs in real estate versus security tokens and tokenization of real estate, two very separate things.
But let's throw some examples of that. So an example of an NFT in real estate could be the mortgage.
So an example of the NFT in real estate would be a land registry product, essentially, or something like what Propy is doing. Yeah, or insurance, or something that has some form of royalty that has
contractual in a whole versus ownership in a, say, whether it's private equity or more timeshare like, where it's the asset itself, which is chopped up against 10, 20, 100 different people.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that Propy is doing is fabulous, right? Because not only have they created an NFT for peer-to-peer transactions of the asset in itself, since the asset is held in an LLC and the ownership of the LLC is represented by the NFT, but they're saying the first agent who sells that NFT is going to continue to receive royalties over a period of time. So they're truly using NFTs for their true purpose: royalties, continued payments, ongoing transfers, peer-to-peer transfers, and so on.
Similarly, we have securities.
No, not at all. So
is it no in that you're just not seeing it, like you haven't seen that happen, or that's not?
For securities to be traded and trailer fees to be paid or royalties to be paid, the person receiving those fees needs to have a securities license, legally not possible kind of deal. And for,
at that point, they're basically like a stockbroker.
Yeah, essentially. You've got to have a Series 6 or a Series 7, Series 23 or something after an SIE or something on those lines, right? So you've got to have securities licensing in place if that has to happen. There are trailer fees paid for security tokens being sold out to registered securities advisors and professionals. However, that is not done the same way as NFTs are. There was another comment made very early on that in order for a token to be compliant, it has to be burnable, and that's part of the regulation. That is a false claim. There is SEC guidance through a no action letter that states security tokens can be self-custodied if they are burnable and reissuable. So it is not part of the regulation. It is a limited time no action letter for self-custody. Only if those tokens are not to be self-custodied, then they don't require to be burnable and reissuable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Similarly, there was another comment about how can NFTs be fractionalized? I already spoke about that. NFTs are not fractionalized doing that. Terry spoke about Propy being the first use case in the US of using NFTs in real estate. Perfect use case. We've been using NFTs for a land registry product in Asia and a land registry product in Africa for the last 2 years. The thing with developing countries is that it's not just the government land registries. There's a lot of private land registries that run about as well. So if I build a building with 1,000 apartments or 1,000 condos, I get to manage the land registry on it on my own. And so the whole factor of bringing trust in a trustless environment becomes even more important. So true use case of NFTs within that space, right? Talking about how do liens happen, how do mortgages happen. So Dubai recently brought their entire land registry along with their judicial system, their banking system, their financial and billing departments, and their utilities all on the blockchain. So now they have their entire land registry on the blockchain. And it is only doable when all of those systems all at once come on the blockchain, and everything gets recorded on the blockchain against that single token of ownership or non-fungible token of ownership in that case. How long do I see NFTs taking over land registries in the US? I would say at least, a decade and a half to 2 decades. It's too fractional. There's over 3,000 county offices across the US.
And they're probably not well funded.
You're talking about bureaucrats, you're talking about red tape, you're talking about slow moving offices within judiciary, land registries. So clerk of courts, as well as county treasurers and auditors. So it's a big mess. Now, when you get into security tokens and tokenization of real estate, that is a very real thing that is happening today. That's exactly.
And that, I think, really is the biggest impact.
Absolutely.
Especially in the near term, because it adds that extra liquidity value that private equity has not had.
Absolutely.
So now that and I think it's going to get to the point to where you're actually going to have investors highly preferring or maybe discounting non-tokenized securities just for that lack of option.
Yeah, so it's not even discounting non-tokenized securities. Excuse me. What really happens is when a real estate asset is valued on the appraisal, a larger commercial real estate asset, the biggest factor affecting the value of it is the discount on marketability, because it's not an easily tradable asset, right? Just like a capital markets product or a Tesla stock or a Facebook stock or something on those lines. So when you move this non-tradable asset to a semi-public market, that discount on marketability reduces, which means there's a premium that gets added on, or as we at Accrue like to call it, the liquidity premium gets added on, and the true value of the asset gets unlocked. And I know we talked about this last time as well. So this kind of goes into cap rate compression, where smaller investors are willing to take slightly smaller returns because they're getting access to this asset class, but that unlocks that real value. And that's exactly what's going to happen, what you said, that people would really want to get the true value of the asset, and therefore they want to go for tokenized assets versus the non-tokenized assets, as well as they want the liquidity. Who doesn't want liquidity? Who wants to wait for 45 days before they sell their house, or 6 months or a year before they sell their commercial building? That's a tough spot to be in.
It seems like that cap rate compression, that's a restricted time window, it's a limited time window, meaning once it happens and we're already that's the new normal, then that goes away, just because you're all under the same rules now. But that transition potentially puts really good operators that do their job and have good assets and good properties, they stand to win the benefit of being first, but they may have some front end costs. So they are going to be paying for it on the front end, but they may actually get a good windfall.
Yeah, the front end cost is so fractional. What is really important is that they pick the right product for making these changes, right? We were at a conference last week where there's plenty of tokenization companies out there who are working not just in real estate, but also a whole bunch of other private market assets, all good companies. The problem with real estate is real estate has very specific needs. So you can't go to I don't know, I'm not even going to take a name of any company, but you can go to an XYZ tokenization company and then go to an ATS and then expect that, this is going to provide us the best optimum solution. And then go to maybe Appfolio or Juniper Square or something for your investor management and your reporting and your financial, that's not really solving a problem. You're creating more problems by doing something like that. And that's why we created Accrue, right? We wanted to kind of have a white glove solution where we provided A to Z solution. It's from initial due diligence, tokenization, initial offering, secondary market, investor management, asset management, distributions, reporting, the whole 9 yards, all in one simple solution. And that's why it's very important for asset owners and operators to pick the right solutions, something that will truly remove the hurdles and not bring in more problems and more friction into the transaction.
Because it's already funky as it is now. But as we get along, we're going to have that those bridges and all that, whether it's in the same platform or we'll have the Zapier type programs that can bridge between one app to another seamlessly.
Yeah, no, like we use Invenium for credentialing all the data that's behind every asset on our platform, right? So we Invenium every asset, as Sam started off with it. So there's already those things being built in. Like we have API calls into AppFolio, Yardi, Rent Manager for getting the real-time data onto the Accrued platform if you don't want to move from your existing platform onto the Accrued platform. So those bridges are being built, but someone needs to build it for the industry, right? Mm-hmm. So and people really need to understand the difference between what happens when you NFT an asset, like Property does, or what happens when you tokenize an asset, which is the case for investment assets, right? Mm-hmm. So Property enables real-time peer-to-peer transactions. You never have to go back to a title company to do it. You could just buy, sell, and trade it as and when you wish to do so. Your NFT represents the ownership within the LLC. There may or may not be any form of debt on that property. I'm not sure what Property's model on that is, but all of those things kind of come into play on that.
Love it. Well, appreciate it. You've been a wealth of information here, and look forward to talking to you again soon. We are going to be tokenizing our next fund, so I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
I'm excited about that. Look forward to working with you. Check out accrue.co, akru.co, and thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Take care.